Good morning. How you guys doing?
Good.
How are we doing? All right, I'll do this again. Good morning. How are we doing?
Good.
All right, I guess we could settle for that. Good morning, guys. Hey, welcome to LP Students. If this is your first time, I just want to welcome you. This is just an awesome place. Sunday mornings, and I want to welcome you guys back to Thursday night. Thursday nights we have a lot of fun. We do a lot of great things. And we get to worship God in a group environment where we combine the high school and the junior hires together. And so it's just a fun space to do that. So I invite you guys back on Thursday night. We got some fun stuff planned. I'm super stoked for that. A little bit about my story. My name is Cobie. I'm interning with Grant this summer. I go to school in Southern California, and I get to just have a great time with you guys this summer, learning how to do ministry, So I'm learning the ropes. I'm getting taught by Grant. It's just a fun thing to do. I actually went through all the way through the kids program and the youth ministry here at LifePointe. So I went all the way through, and it was just such an awesome time. And I love this age group. I love your guys' age because your age is just a really transformative time of your life. Where you start to do your own thing. You're like, Mom and Dad, like, I now know like everything in the world. Like, I get it. I know where you're at. Like, you know everything. You know way more than your mom and dad will ever know. I understand that, and I know you truly believe that. And so it's just a weird time of your life where transition is happening, and at the same time, I think for your spiritual life, it's a very, very important time. And so I'm honored to be able to walk through this journey with you for this season of summer, and just excited for those events that we have going on, for the shirts and for the Pops August, all the fun stuff, as well as just camp and different things where we get to experience Jesus as well. So I'm excited for all of that. I want to start this message out this morning with talking about the Bible. And I think this is important because we're talking about a book that is very difficult to read and very difficult to think through. I mean, if you know the story of Jonah, there's some very weird things that happen in this book that we don't see every day. There's some things in Jonah that you read through, and it's easy to read through in a sentence, but when you actually think about what it's talking about, it's a little weird. And we're going to explore some of that this morning, but I want to start by saying that we believe this book to be true. We believe that the Bible was sent from the Lord so that we can read it today. We can read this Bible and we can know that it is truth. It is not something that we should look through and say, hey, this is true and this is this is true and this is But we can read through this knowing that God sent this down to us. It was inspired by the Holy Spirit so that we may read this and know that this is truth and that we can apply this book to our lives today. So I want to preface the message with this morning, because as we read through this story, we're not going to read through it and say, some of this is true and some of it isn't. We're not going to say, this story is a little weird because, well, we don't see this today. We're not going to say that. We're going to say, like, this actually happened. This is actually history that we can look to and know that it actually happened. So if you want to have your Bibles, or if you have your Bible app, we're going to start in Jonah chapter 1 today. We're going to start in the very first verse of Jonah. And if you want to follow along, you can, or you can listen to me read it out to you. But we're just going to start by reading the first 3 verses. It says, Jonah chapter 1, verse 1, it says, the word of the Lord came to Jonah, son of Amittai. Go to the great city of Nineveh and preach against it, because its wickedness has come up before me. But Jonah ran away from the Lord and headed for Tarshish. He went down to Joppa, where he found a ship bound for that port. After paying the fare, he went aboard and sailed for Tarshish to flee from the Lord. So a little story. I recently got back from a trip. I was gone for 3 months, and my brother and I wanted to hang out. We wanted to do something fun, and so we hadn't seen each other in several months, and we're like, okay, so like, what can we do when I get home? So for me, I go to school in Southern California. I got back to Southern California. I was out of the States, and I got home, and my brother and I were like, let's go do something fun. Let's go see the Grand Canyon. So we hopped in his little Nissan, and we set out to go see the Grand Canyon. It was my first time ever. I wanted just to see it. And so we set out, and we spent one night in Vegas, and our plan was to go from Vegas to the Grand Canyon, back to Southern California, and then the next day. Our plan was we were going to literally drive there, drive back. We didn't want to pay for a room. We didn't want to pay for a hotel or anything. We literally just wanted to do the long drive all day long. If you do the math, if you look at a map for Horseshoe Bend, which is our destination, it was going to be 15 hours of driving that day. You say, Cobie, you're crazy. You're like, yeah, you know, whatever. So we drove 15 hours that day from Vegas to the Grand Canyon and then back through Vegas all the way to Southern California because my grandma lives there and we had a place to sleep. We didn't want to pay for a house or for a hotel. So we drove 15 hours that day, and we were going to go see the Grand Canyon. I was super excited. It was going to be a fun time. And we're just hanging out. We're laughing. We're singing way louder. We're losing our voices. We're just going crazy. We're just doing the whole road trip thing. And we're on the open road. And the way to get there is you have to go up into Utah and then back down into Arizona. That's just the route that the freeways take you. And so we're in Utah at this point. We crossed over the border, and we're driving through Utah, and all of a sudden there's snow on the top of the mountains, and there's just snow. It just starts covering everywhere. It's not snowing, but it's like snow is everywhere. I'm like, this is weird. Like, I think we're about an hour and a half out, and the Grand Canyon is like very close, but it doesn't look anything like the Grand Canyon. There's high mountains, and there's snow everywhere, and I'm like, this is kind of weird. So we pull up Google Maps, and we've got a lot of driving to do that day, and we pull up Google Maps, and we look at our estimated time of arrival. And the estimated time of arrival appears to have been pushed back by 2.5 hours. My genius brother, which, yes, I'm going to blame him completely, took a wrong turn and missed the Grand Canyon. We had driven deep into the Utah wilderness. We were deep in the wilderness where there was probably people shooting animals to our left and the right. We saw these massive creatures, snow everywhere, like we were in Hick Town, right? And I was like, Cameron, what are we going to do? We just gained 2.5 hours of driving today. What are we going to do? So we did eventually make it. We did eventually make it to the Grand Canyon. You can show that the picture. It was a beautiful spot. It's called Horseshoe Bend. And it's this beautiful place. I'm standing right here on the cliff overlooking the Grand Canyon that comes around and kind of creates this horseshoe. Beautiful location. We got back at I think 2 a.m. And then eventually we left early the next morning for our next destination. But it was a crazy long day of driving. And we added 2.5 hours to our trip that we did not need to do. At the time I was a little angry, but it turned out to be a good thing, and it was fun, and we got to obviously get there and see it, and it's a beautiful place. But I want to bring this back into what we're talking about, the story of Jonah. Okay? And think for a second, I'm on this road to the Grand Canyon. And it's not like I'm going to the Grand Canyon, I'm going from point A to point B, and I took a little detour. I went off the track for a little bit, and then I brought it back in. You know what I'm saying here? If you can picture your drive from here to home, let's say you make a wrong turn and it adds a little time to your journey. But what we're talking about here this morning with Jonah is completely different. Jonah did not say, I'm going to go to Nineveh where God is calling me. I'm going there and I'm going to take a wrong turn. But if we can toss up the first map, I want you guys to see what is actually happening here. I know it's a little difficult to see, but on the bottom right corner you have Joppa. Joppa is about, there's a little flag there, and that's where he kind of starts at. He goes to Joppa, it's a port city, and you can see the flag on the far right, and that's Nineveh. And then if you look at the far left, there's Tarshish. So we're talking about Noah is in, wow, did I see Noah multiple times? Hopefully I did. Jonah is in Joppa area. And God says, go to Nineveh. He says, go to the northeast, go to Nineveh, to that corner. And it says Jonah hopped on a boat and went for Tarshish instead. So we're not talking about he's on his way to the Grand Canyon and misses the turn and kind of gets lost and I didn't have Google Maps, you can't blame me kind of thing. He literally goes to Joppa, a port city, and travels in the exact opposite direction. And you see this purple line start to go up and over, and you see the trajectory to shoot across to Tarshish. This is an estimated travel route that Jonah had taken. This is what some scholars and historians guess his travels would have looked like. They would have gone from Joppa up north and just shot, if you can imagine that purple line shooting across all the way to Tarshish. And you say, well, why does it stop? Why does it stop and do that little weird turn and everything? Well, we're going to look at that this morning. So as we dive back in, we're going to look, and I just want to show you this map for a second because I want you to see. This isn't, Jonah's on his way to Nineveh and took a wrong turn. No, God says, go to the great city of Nineveh. And it says, but Jonah ran away from the Lord and headed for Tarshish. He went to Joppa, he bought his ticket, he went aboard this and sailed for Tarshish to flee from the Lord. So we pick up in verse 4. If you want to read along, it says, Then the Lord sent a great wind on the sea, and such a violent storm arose that the ship threatened to break up. So what happens when the ship threatens to break up? All the sailors were afraid, and each cried out to his own God, and they threw the cargo into the sea to lighten the ship. But Jonah had gone down below. I love this. This is weird. It says, Jonah had gone down below the deck, where he lay down and fell into a deep sleep. My man's sleeping right now. Like, the ship is like turning and tossing. The crew is afraid. They're terrified. They're literally throwing things into the water. And my man Jonah is down below sleeping. There's something weird going on. It's almost like he has a calmness because he maybe knows what's going on. So let's read on. The captain went to him and said, How in the world can you sleep? Get up and call on your God. Maybe he will take your notice of us so that we will not perish. Then the sailors said to each other, Come, let us cast lots to find out who is responsible for this calamity. They cast lots, and the lot fell on Jonah. So they asked him, Tell us, who is responsible for making all this trouble for us? What kind of work do you do? Where do you come from? Where's your country? From what people are you? I think it's weird, like they're playing this game, they're casting lots. They realize, it's Jonah's fault. And then they play 10 questions with him. They kind of they ask him the bunch of questions. They're like, who are you? Where are you from? Why is this happening to us? Who's your mom? What's her name? Who's your dad? They're starting to ask him, I imagine they're just asking all these questions, who are you? And why is this happening to us because of you? They're like, who is this man that's on this ship with us? So he answers. After all these questions, Jonah goes on and answers. He says, I am a Hebrew and I worship the Lord, the God of heaven, who made the sea and the dry land. This terrified them, and they asked, What have you done? The sea was getting rougher and rougher, so they asked him, What should we do to make the sea calm down for us? Right? It makes sense. The question here makes sense. What should we do? So Jonah says, Pick me up and throw me into the sea, and it will become calm. I know that it is my fault that this great storm has come upon us. But instead, catch this, the men did their best to row back to the land. So instead of throwing him into the sea, they said, we're going to try. We're going to row our boat. And we're going to try to get to the land. We're going to see if we can beat this storm. We don't want to kill this man. Because what we're talking about is literally killing Jonah. They're saying, we're going to toss Jonah into the water, and he's going to die. Because we're out in the open on water. So they tried to row the land, but they could not, for the sea grew even wilder than before. Then they cried out to the Lord, Please, Lord, do not let us die for taking this man's life. Do not hold us accountable for killing an innocent man. For you, Lord, have done as you pleased. Then they took Jonah and threw him overboard, and the raging sea grew calm. And the men greatly feared the Lord, and they offered a sacrifice to the Lord and made vows to him. Verse 17, the last verse of the chapter. It says, Now the Lord provided a huge fish to swallow Jonah. A huge fish swallowed Jonah. And Jonah was in the belly of the fish 3 days and 3 nights. I just want to look at a little bit, hone in on the right side of the map. So this is more clear. It's still kind of hard to see, but you guys get the gist of it. This is zoomed in on the right side of the map here. And so this shows his journey. He goes down from his starting position down to Joppa. He then hops on the boat for Tarshish. It heads up, over, and then straight towards Tarshish. And at that point, that's when the storm came. Where the purple stops is where the storm was. This storm took this ship by surprise. It threw this ship into a storm. It was tossing and turning. The crew was scared, and they started literally throwing things off the side of the boat. This isn't super weird to us. We see in other times of Scripture where in the New Testament and different places where there was a storm and they would throw cargo into the water to lighten the ship, to make it easier to ride the waves. But I want to give you guys an image of where we're talking about right now. Again, the Bible is true. This stuff happened. It's not in this make-believe land. It's not on some other planet. But it literally happened on this earth. And I want to show you exactly where this stuff happened. Now, it might be a little bit off, but this is the general area of what we're talking about here. So he's in the middle of the water, and Jonah says, "Toss me overboard." And they don't want to, right? And it makes sense. They do not want to kill Jonah. So they try not to. They try to row their boat back to land, but they can't. So Jonah is tossed overseas. And the Lord provided a huge fish. Weird, huh? You ever seen someone live in a fish for 3 days and 3 nights? Stinky is right. I go to San Francisco, that place is stinky. But think about inside of an actual fish. So Jonah was swallowed by this fish, provided by the Lord. And that's the end of chapter 1. That's the story. Then it moves to chapter 2, chapter 3, and it goes forward from there. But what we're going to talk about this morning is just this part of the story. And you guys got to come back in future weeks to see what happens from there. But there's 3 big lessons that I want you guys to catch from this morning. 3 big lessons that I think we can be learned from this message, learned from this story. If you guys are taking notes, I encourage you to write this down. These things that you can think about throughout your week if you want to. But 3 big lessons that I wrote down that I think are important for us to grasp from this story. Number 1, your actions and decisions actually affect those around you. I want you to think about this for a second. Jonah was on this boat, and this boat almost collapsed. It almost broke. It almost crashed. And the reason is because Jonah ran away from the Lord, and the Lord said, "No, Jonah, I'm going to catch your attention. I'm going to toss this boat around." But Jonah was not on the boat by himself. He was on a boat filled with people. And they came to this scary situation because of Jonah's disobedience. Your actions and your decisions affect those around you. And what I think is a problem is our culture tries to tell us that your actions and your decisions do not affect those around you. Our culture wants to tell us that you can do whatever you want to. Do it and get away with it. Do it so it doesn't, so you don't get caught. Our culture tells us all these things, if you can get away with it, go for it. Our culture tries to tell us that your decisions affect you and they mess up you, but that's it. What I want you guys to grasp is that our actions and our decisions affect those around us. The decisions that you make, good or bad, will affect the people that you're surrounded with. So guys, I want you to think about this. Because we cannot be careless in the way that we live our lives. God has called us to a certain way of living. The Bible it holds a story of Jesus. That Jesus came and gives us life in Him. But it doesn't say go and live as you want. Go and chase the things of this world. Jesus says chase after me. Chase after me. Do not be careless in the way that you live. Because your actions and your decisions affect those around us. I think an easy illustration or an easy example is your language. Your language, think about your words that you speak are powerful. They're very, very, very powerful. Your words have the opportunity to tear someone down or pick someone up. Your words have the ability to make someone feel terrible about themselves. Or your words have the power to lift someone up and encourage them. Your words can give life to people, or your words can take away life. So when we think about the way that we live our lives, I just want to encourage you this morning and say that the way you live your life actually affects other people. That's number one. Number two is the Lord always offers a way out. Always offers a way out. I love Jonah chapter 1, verse 17. It says, now the Lord provided. I like that word. Provided. The Lord provided a huge fish to swallow Jonah. It didn't say that the fish stumbled across the boat and then swallowed Jonah. It didn't say that this fish had not eaten for 3 months and was starving. He had stomach pains because he was so hungry. Like you could hear the stomach grumbling from miles away. It didn't say that. What did it say? It said the Lord provided a huge fish. Another translation says appointed. Think of this idea of like, what does it mean to be appointed to do something? We think about that with humans, right? But we don't tend to think about that with fish. The Lord provided a fish. The Lord appointed a fish to swallow Jonah. The Lord always offers a way out. No matter where you've ran to, no matter who you turn to, no matter where you've gone or what you've done, no matter how far running towards Tarshish you are, the Lord offers a way out. I want to encourage you guys this morning in that Jesus offers a way out. We can continually chase after the things of this world. But Jesus says, no, my son. No, my daughter. Do not run for Tarshish, but come to me. And he does not care where you're at. He doesn't care if you're in Joppa. He doesn't care if you're on the boat to Tarshish. He doesn't care if you're almost to Tarshish. He doesn't care where you're at. If you're running from the Lord, Jesus says, I'm providing a way out. And if you're scared, I'm gonna calm you for a second. It doesn't mean that he's gonna send a fish to eat you. But Jesus offers a way out. And that leads me to my last point this morning. That we worship a God of second chances. It doesn't matter what you've done. It doesn't matter what you've done. Jesus offers us a life. Offers us a life to the fullest. Found only in Him. And I want to encourage you guys this morning with this truth. That we worship a God of second chances. So my question to you is, you think about this story of Jonah, right? The Bible is applicable to our lives. So as we read the story and study the story this morning, I ask you a question. Where are you running? Where are you running? Are you like Jonah and running towards Tarshish? Or are you running towards Him? I have a story. It was 2 years ago. I just gotten into college and I wanted to do something a little crazy. Like, Cobie, why in the world would you ever want to do this? Well, I wanted to run a marathon. They'd be like, that's weird. Yes, okay, whatever. You call me weird. I don't care. But I got into college and I wanted to train for a marathon. I wanted to run a bunch and train. It's a long distance race. It's 26 miles. It takes a lot of training, a lot of effort, a lot of motivation, a lot of dedication. It takes all of these things to actually do the race. It isn't something that you actually just show up on race day and say, hey, like, look at my legs. You see these babies? They're going to take me 26 miles. Who says they can do that on race day? Just show up and run. Anybody? Bold, Brett. Something tells me Brett could actually do that, though. Lisa? But you don't do this, right? You don't show up on race day and say, hey, like, look at my strong legs. Like, these babies are going to get me 26 miles. Think about how far 26 miles are. Now, to give you some background, I ran cross country in high school. I had done a couple of half marathons, and so I did have running in my background. But 26 miles, man, like, that's far. That's really far. It's not something that you just go out and do. So I trained. I trained hard. Put my head down. I ran mile after mile, day after day. I ran 5 days a week for 18 weeks to train for this marathon. March of last year, I ran the Los Angeles Marathon. It was a big deal for me. It was something that I wanted to do, so I trained for it. I trained hard. I put my head down, I grinded. I just ran and ran and ran. But race day was rough. It was really rough. And you say, no, duh, it's 26 miles. But I want to give you a perspective. I actually trained hard enough to do it really well. I trained enough to where the race day came around and I felt confident. Like I felt good. I wanted to go out, and it wasn't like I was going to be struggling like step after step to just get to the finish line. It wasn't supposed to be like that. I trained hard for 18 weeks to do it well. I trained hard enough so that I would not have to stop running the entire time. I would be able to hold a decent pace for 4 hours and run this marathon. I trained hard. So what happened? Well, my family came to town, and they asked me, Cobie, we have a gift card to this fancy restaurant. We would love to take you out to dinner the night before your race. It was a lot of money, and it was my extended family, and it was an expensive restaurant. It was my extended family, and I couldn't say no. So I had to go. I went to this fancy restaurant in Azusa where I go to school, and they came down, they visited me, it was great company, and they bought me this massive pasta because you're supposed to carb load. You're supposed to eat a bunch of pasta the night before your race. We went to dinner at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. You're supposed to eat really early. I did it. I'm telling you, I did everything right. I studied it. I know what to do. But this place is brutal. It's tempting. They have a lot of really good food there. They have a lot of pasta options. They have pasta that you can eat for plain, but that's not even on the menu. You eat pasta at this fancy restaurant covered in just grease. That's it's a fancy restaurant. You guys ever been to a fancy restaurant? I'm not talking grease nasty. Talking it's a good bowl of pasta. It has all the extras on it. I'm not eating pasta by itself. I'm eating the gourmet pasta. I had a hard time saying no that night. And it cost me the next day. I get 3 miles into my race. And I hadn't run that short in weeks. I got 3 miles into my race, and I found myself running to a porta potty. Instead of running to the finish line, I found myself running to a porta potty. And that was time number 1. I went another mile, and I found myself running again. And went another 2 miles and found myself running again. I had literally screwed myself over here, y'all. I spent 4.5 hours. It was the worst 4.5 hours of my entire life. We can laugh about it now, right? But those 4.5 hours were literally miserable. Things were going through my head I had trained for 18 weeks for this. I had trained hard. My legs are strong. They're ready. But my stomach is just messing with me right now. You ever had your stomach mess with you? And try to just keep on running? Okay, I got to mile 15 and I was in so much pain, my stomach was hurting. And I knew I still had 8 more miles, or wow, that's not terrible, 11 more miles to go. I can't do math, sorry. It was miserable. And then the next thing started to kick in. Because I had spent so much time running and then stopping, my legs started to freeze up. I could not drink water because my stomach hurt so bad. So at this point, I'm now dehydrated. I've emptied out my stomach of all the good things and all the bad things in my body. So what happens then? You hit the wall. Your body starts to shut down. My legs start to cramp up so bad I can no longer stand. I get to mile 18 and I literally cannot stand. I have to sit on the curb and sit there with my face in my lap. I'm so ashamed. I had trained for 18 weeks for this, but I cannot stand. My leg is cramped so bad. I can still remember that moment so clearly as I'm sitting on that curb, watching the people just jog by. thinking I physically cannot stand right now. My leg is cramping so bad. As soon as I go from horizontal to vertical and put any weight on my leg, it cramps so bad I want to fall. It was rough. It was rough. I eventually crossed the finish line that day, and I felt miserable. I had not had water or Gatorade or anything for miles. My stomach was not holding anything. My legs, both at this point, were cramping. I collapsed on the ground quickly and sat there for about 2 hours. I had to start feeding my system because I was so empty inside. It was painful. It was painful. And why did this happen? All because of my lovely family that wanted to treat me to some pasta. I am actually thankful. They took me to a very nice restaurant, and it was a fun night. But the next day was brutal for me. Running is weird. Running hurts, but doesn't it feel good when you're done? Like looking back now, I accomplished something that was so great. A marathon, it's not like the highest thing, it's not the most difficult thing in the entire world. It's not like I didn't do it like crazy fast, obviously. But I finished, I ran 26 miles. Well, you can't really call it running. But I got through 26 miles. It's a physical feat. Running can be difficult. It hurts the body. But I think the thing is I put my head down for 18 weeks. And I put my head down and I just ran. Mile after mile after mile. Some days I didn't want to run. Some days it hurt to get out of bed and run again. I was so sore. It's not always fun. But I did it. And it was an accomplishment. Running is weird though, because it hurts. It's painful. It's a journey. And it's training to get to the finish line. I did my training so that I could get to the finish line. And I want to ask you this morning, where are you running? What is your finish line? You're standing somewhere and you can look two different directions. There's a finish line both ways. You can look this direction or you can look this direction. Jonah was given a call by the Lord. Jonah was called and said, go to Nineveh. There is your finish line. Go to Nineveh. Be obedient. Go speak to these people who are lost. Go to Nineveh. And what did Jonah do? Jonah said, I know Nineveh is there, but I'm going to run into Tarshish. I'm afraid. I'm not going to go to Nineveh, but I'm going to run the other direction. So I'm asking you this morning, where are you running? Are you running towards Nineveh or are you running towards Tarshish? Are you running towards the Lord or are you running away from the Lord? We are all given a choice. This is kind of the premise of why we're here. Died on the cross for your sins so that you may have life. Life in Him. So you can either choose to run towards that. You may choose to live your life in accordance with the Bible and live your life having a relationship with Jesus, running towards Jesus. Or you can choose to run away from Jesus. So I ask you this morning, where are you running? And I want to make a plea to you guys. The life is found in Jesus. And for some of you guys, you're starting a new journey this morning. You're starting a new journey in LP Students. This is new for you. This is your first time. Some of you are graduating and going to 9th grade. Some of you guys, you're going to 8th grade, you're transitioning to a new grade level. There's constantly transition happening in our life. But I want to encourage you with this, that Jesus stays constant. Jesus always gives you a choice to run towards Him or to say no. I want to encourage you guys to say yes to Jesus, to run towards Him, and find life in a relationship with Him. Will you pray with me? God, thank you for the story of Jonah. Thank you for a story that we can look back to in history and see someone who made a bad decision to run from you. God, I pray that we all make a choice to run towards you. We make a choice to say yes to you and to give our lives over to you and have a relationship with you. God, we love you. In your name we pray.